Something that begins in your 50s, accelerates in your 60s, and becomes disabling by the time you're in your 70s. But this narrative is both outdated and damaging. Muscle loss, or sarcopenia, is not a guaranteed fate. It's a biological response to a mismatch between what your body needs and what it's being provided. That mismatch can be corrected at any age by shifting what you feed your body, how you activate your muscles, and how you engage your brain to support those efforts. The body doesn't just decide to waste away muscle with age. Rather, it adjusts based on signals it receives from your nervous system, your hormones, and your environment. Like many things in health and fitness, the food we eat and the sleep we get can make or break. For most adults, especially seniors, the biggest driver of muscle loss is inactivity, followed closely by insufficient protein intake, changes in anabolic hormone sensitivity, and reduced neural stimulation of muscle fibers. These variables are all modifiable, and the sooner that truth is understood, the sooner the process of reversing muscle loss can begin. Your muscles are incredibly adaptive tissues. They respond to demands placed on them. When you stop challenging them, whether through strength training, walking, or even standing and balance work, they become metabolically inactive. This doesn't just make you physically weaker, it also increases your risk for insulin resistance, cognitive decline, and falls. The process is systemic. It affects how your brain communicates with your body, how your body uses nutrients, and how your mitochondria produce energy. However, just as inactivity and poor nutrition accelerate muscle loss, intentional actions in the opposite direction can trigger regrowth, even if you haven't exercised for decades. This is not theory, it's biology. The central nervous system communicates directly with muscle through motor neurons. These neurons can be reactivated. Even in people age 75 or older, studies show that just a few weeks of targeted physical movement combined with anabolic nutrition can cause hypertrophy, the increase of muscle fiber size. That means stronger muscles, better posture, improved balance, and enhanced metabolic health. But to activate these changes, the brain needs certain conditions met: adequate stimulus, proper nutrients, and consistent patterns that reinforce muscle maintenance as a priority. Part of the misunderstanding around muscle loss comes from how we define aging. Aging is often seen as degeneration, but biologically, aging is accumulated inflammation and accumulated neglect. The human body is hardwired to repair itself when given the proper tools. In fact, the turnover of muscle tissue continues throughout life. Muscle protein synthesis, the process by which muscle is rebuilt, is still active in older adults. The problem is that the rate of synthesis drops due to inactivity, low protein meals, poor sleep, and oxidative stress. These are environmental variables, not fixed aspects of age. When seniors begin to adjust these inputs by walking daily, adding brief strength exercises, increasing high-quality protein intake, and sleeping with consistency, the brain begins to reprioritize muscle as vital tissue. The nervous system re-engages. Neuroplasticity allows the motor cortex to build new pathways for better coordination. Mitochondria in the muscle fibers respond to the increase in demand by producing more energy. The net effect is that muscle becomes active again and regrowth starts. This shift is not just about looking fit. Muscle tissue supports cognitive health. When muscles contract, they release molecules called myokines, which enter the bloodstream and travel to the brain, triggering protective and restorative effects. They improve mood, enhance memory, and reduce inflammation in the hippocampus. This connection between muscular activation and brain health becomes more important with age. Seniors who maintain muscle mass show better performance in memory tests, lower risk for Alzheimer's, and higher quality of life overall. It's also critical to understand that the loss of muscle is not evenly distributed across the body. The lower body, legs, hips, and glutes are usually the first and fastest to decline because modern living has removed many of the natural demands we used to place on them. Sitting for hours at a time accelerates neuromuscular disconnect. Reversing this trend means reintroducing purposeful movement, such as standing up from a chair without using hands, climbing stairs, or doing controlled squats against a wall. These simple actions light up neural circuits that reawaken muscle growth. Equally important is the mindset around aging and strength. Many seniors have been told or have internalized that building muscle is for the young, that it's too late, or that it's somehow dangerous. This is not only wrong, it's harmful. Research has repeatedly shown that even individuals in their 80s can build muscle safely with light resistance, proper form, and consistency. But they need to believe it's possible, because belief influences neurochemical readiness. When you believe growth is still an option, the brain releases more dopamine during activity. Dopamine enhances attention, energy, and motor learning. It helps wire in the gains you're working for. When these factors are all combined, nutritional upgrades, movement routines, belief in change, the effect is exponential. Not only can seniors halt muscle loss, but they can actively rebuild what's been lost. More importantly, they regain confidence, independence, and a deeper connection between their mind and body. Muscle loss after 60 is not a permanent sentence. It is a signal that the system needs different inputs. And when you learn how to provide those inputs consistently and intelligently, you give your body the opportunity to not just survive aging, but to thrive within it. Among all the nutritional strategies that have been studied to reverse muscle loss in aging adults, one food consistently stands out, not because it's trendy or exotic, but because of its remarkable biological utility. That food is the whole egg. For decades, eggs were misunderstood, even feared due to outdated cholesterol theories, but modern science has made something abundantly clear. When it comes to rebuilding muscle, particularly in seniors, whole eggs are one of the most efficient, complete, and neurologically beneficial sources of nutrition available. And their effects are not theoretical. They're biochemical and immediate. What makes eggs so uniquely powerful is their complete amino acid profile, especially their high content of leucine, an essential branch-chain amino acid that directly activates the mTOR, mechanistic target of rapamycin, pathway in the body. This is not just a technical term. mTOR is the central command system that regulates muscle protein synthesis. When leucine levels in the bloodstream rise above a certain threshold, mTOR is activated, triggering the body to start building muscle tissue. This pathway becomes harder to stimulate with age because of what's known as anabolic resistance, meaning older muscles don't respond as easily to the same amount of protein as younger muscles. But eggs, particularly whole eggs, overcome this resistance far more effectively than isolated protein powders or incomplete plant-based proteins. This is because the yolk, often discarded or feared in past decades, contains essential cofactors like choline, vitamin D, healthy fats, and phospholipids that work synergistically with the egg white's protein to stimulate not just muscle protein synthesis, but also neurological repair, mitochondrial activation, and hormonal support. The yolk is not just safe, it's essential. Research has shown that consuming whole eggs after resistance exercise leads to greater muscle protein synthesis than consuming the same amount of protein from egg whites alone. This finding highlights something deeply important. Nutrients don't work in isolation. The body evolved to respond to food in its whole form, where micronutrients and macronutrients interact to produce complex biological effects. For seniors experiencing muscle decline, this matters immensely. Muscle is not just a structure of strength, it's an organ of metabolism, insulin regulation, and hormonal signaling. It's involved in everything from glucose disposal to the release of protective brain chemicals like BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. To maintain and rebuild it, the body requires not just calories, but nutrients that speak directly to the nervous system. Eggs provide this in an incredibly efficient package. Just 2 to 3 whole eggs in the morning can provide enough leucine and cofactors to stimulate mTOR, support cognitive clarity, and elevate energy levels without spiking blood sugar or triggering inflammation. Timing matters too. The first meal of the day plays a disproportionately large role in setting the body's metabolic tone and neurotransmitter balance. Consuming a high leucine, high protein breakfast centered around whole eggs has been shown to improve muscle retention, satiety, and focus throughout the day. For seniors, this approach is even more powerful. The digestive system becomes less efficient with age, and fasting too long in the morning can lead to muscle catabolism, breakdown of tissue for energy. But by front-loading the day with high-quality protein, particularly from whole eggs, the body enters an anabolic state early where growth and repair are prioritized. In addition to activating mTOR, the cholesterol in egg yolks serves another critical function. It's the raw material for the synthesis of testosterone and other steroid hormones that decline with age. These hormones play a role in maintaining muscle mass, bone density, and even motivation. Dietary cholesterol, in its natural form from foods like eggs, does not raise harmful LDL particles in most people, but it does provide the substrate the body needs to create anabolic hormones. This is a crucial nuance. The fear around eggs in previous generations led many older adults to reduce intake of one of the only foods that could actually support their longevity and mobility. Furthermore, eggs are exceptionally easy to digest and absorb, especially when cooked properly, boiled, poached, or gently scrambled. This makes them ideal for seniors whose digestive capacity may be reduced, and unlike some plant-based proteins, eggs don't carry anti-nutrients that block absorption. Their biological value, a measure of how efficiently the body can use a food's protein, is near perfect, making them one of the best options for anyone trying to rebuild lost muscle mass. But there's a psychological component too. Food is not just fuel, it's information. And when seniors begin to consistently feed their bodies with nutrient-dense sources like whole eggs, they begin to feel stronger, more alert, and more capable, often within days. This creates a feedback loop. Better meals lead to better energy, better movement, and better outcomes. Eating whole eggs regularly sends a neurological signal that says this body is still active, still building, still worth investing in. That message, while intangible, creates real physiological changes. Ultimately, reversing muscle loss in seniors is about getting the inputs right. Movement, mindset, rest. All of these matter, but without the right raw materials, even the best exercise routine will fall short. Whole eggs provide a powerful, proven, and accessible foundation for muscle restoration. They're not just a source of protein. They're a signal to the body that growth is still possible, that strength is still within reach, and that age does not define your capacity for change. Muscle is not just tissue, it's a high-performance communication system. It is driven by the way your brain interacts with your body, by how frequently your neurons fire, and by how well your internal signals align with the nutrients you consume. Many people believe that eating more protein is the only factor in reversing age muscle loss, but that's only part of the equation. What's often overlooked is the role of neuromuscular signaling, the constant dialogue between the brain and muscle fibers, and the precise timing of when nutrients, especially protein, are introduced into the system. This conversation determines whether muscle is preserved, built, or lost. At the center of this is something called motor unit recruitment. Every time you move, your brain sends electrical signals through your spinal cord to activate specific muscle fiber. With aging, these signals tend to weaken. That's not due to inevitable deterioration, but due to lack of consistent use. The phrase "use it or lose it" is neurologically accurate. Without regular stimulus, the neuromuscular system begins to shut down connections it sees as unnecessary. The good news is that these connections can be rebuilt quickly when movement is paired with high-quality nutrition at the right times. Here's how it works. When you engage in resistance or load movement, such as standing from a chair without support, walking upstairs, or holding a plank, you stimulate the motor cortex, the area of the brain that controls movement. That stimulation sends signals down the spinal cord and into the muscles being used, triggering motor neurons to fire. This firing does more than cause contraction. It also increases receptor sensitivity in the muscle to circulating nutrients. In other words, movement makes your muscles more ready to receive and utilize the protein you consume. But this is where timing comes in. After movement, there's a metabolic window, usually within 30 to 90 minutes, where muscle tissue is especially receptive to amino acids. If you consume high leucine protein, like whole eggs or a clean source of lean meat, during this window, your body is far more likely to synthesize new muscle tissue. If you wait too long, the stimulus fades, and that protein is diverted to other tasks in the body. So for seniors trying to rebuild strength, the message is clear. Move first, eat second, and do it consistently. Even without formal workouts, this neuromuscular activation can be achieved through low-impact, structured movement. Things like standing wall presses, light dumbbell lifts, or bodyweight squats for 5-10 minutes can wake up dormant muscle fibers. These micro-movements send loud signals to the brain that the muscle is active and relevant again. When followed by a strategically timed meal high in complete protein, this pattern builds momentum. Over days and weeks, it results in noticeable gains in strength, balance, and endurance, even in individuals over 70. This is backed by brain imaging and blood work studies. Functional MRI scans show that after just a few sessions of coordinated movement paired with adequate nutrition, older adults show increased motor cortex activity, better signal transmission, and faster reaction times. Blood markers such as IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1, which plays a major role in tissue regeneration, also increase when protein is consumed within the post-movement window. Protein is a source of great contrasted development, and many other important stimuli are activated in the post-movement window. The effect is not just physical, it's deeply neurological. The entire system gets more efficient, more resilient, and more adaptable. It's important to note that protein distribution throughout the day matters as much as total protein intake. Many seniors make the mistake of eating too little protein at breakfast and lunch, then trying to compensate with a large dinner. But the body operates best when protein is evenly spaced. Consuming around 25-35 grams of high-quality protein per meal gives your muscles multiple opportunities to stimulate synthesis throughout the day. Think of each meal as a rep for your muscles. If you miss the morning or midday protein dose, you're missing a chance to rebuild tissue. There's also a circadian aspect to this process. The body is naturally more anabolic, more prone to growth during the daylight hours, especially the first half of the day. This aligns with our evolutionary biology. Physical activity and food consumption in the morning and early afternoon better supports muscle maintenance than late night eating. For seniors, this means breakfast is not optional. It's a chance to trigger the growth process at the cellular level, setting the tone for muscle preservation throughout the day. Neuromuscular signaling is also influenced by focus and intention. When you perform a movement while fully present, feeling the muscles contract, controlling the tempo, and visualizing the strength, you activate more of the central nervous system. This strengthens the mind-muscle connection, which increases motor unit recruitment and enhances the efficiency of every rep. Simply going through the motions doesn't have the same effect. Seniors who train with conscious attention tend to progress faster and maintain better form, which reduces injury risk. Incorporating simple intentional movement into your morning followed by a protein-rich meal creates a feedback loop of strength. Over time, this strengthens not only the body, but also the brain circuits responsible for coordination, confidence, and motivation. The nervous system doesn't stop adapting after 60, it just requires more deliberate input. Combining movement with timing and mindful eating gives the body a clear instruction: maintain and grow. This strategy turns the tide against age muscle loss and restores a sense of control over the aging process. Nutrition alone doesn't build muscle, just as exercise alone won't sustain it without the right nutrients. The human body operates as an integrated system, where food, movement, and mindset work in tandem to create lasting change. For seniors seeking to reverse muscle loss, understanding this integration is not just helpful, it's essential. One of the most underestimated forces in this process is the synergy between nutrition and movement, amplified by the beliefs and patterns we hold in our mind. The body is designed to respond to consistent input, and when nutrition is timed with movement and reinforced by positive neural circuits, muscle regeneration becomes not only possible, but sustainable, even in the later decades of life. Movement primes muscle tissue. When we move, particularly against resistance or with effort, our skeletal muscles are activated not just physically, but biochemically. They become more insulin sensitive, more receptive to amino acids, and more metabolically active. In this state, when high-quality nutrients, especially protein, healthy fats, and key micronutrients are introduced, the body knows what to do. It begins to rebuild, repair, and grow. But this effect is significantly heightened when movement is performed consistently, with awareness, and when the body recognizes that the effort is part of a greater pattern, not a one-time event. Even simple movements like walking, climbing stairs, using light resistance bands, or standing up from a chair multiple times a day can be powerful triggers. These activities don't need to resemble traditional gym workouts to be effective. They simply need to create enough muscular demand to tell the nervous system, we're still active, we still need strength. That demand makes the brain reprioritize the maintenance and rebuilding of muscle. It also elevates mood-enhancing neurochemicals like dopamine and norepinephrine, which boost motivation and reinforce behavioral consistency. When movement becomes part of a daily rhythm, paired with timely whole food nutrition, it creates a biological momentum. The body begins to look for recovery, to anticipate fuel, and to adapt to the cycle of exertion and nourishment. A morning walk followed by a protein-rich breakfast, for example, isn't just a healthy habit, it's a neurological anchor point. It teaches the brain to expect effort and reward, which strengthens motivation circuits over time. These loops matter deeply for seniors because habits grounded in rhythm become automatic and reduce cognitive load. Mindset is the third amplifier in this equation. The beliefs we hold about our body, our capacity to change, and our age can either ignite or inhibit progress. Neuroscience has shown that belief influences biology. When you believe you are too old to change, the brain reduces dopamine release during effort and neuroplasticity declines. But when you believe your actions matter, the brain enhances motor learning and retention. This means that every small win, every time you follow through on a movement session, a protein-rich meal, or a moment of mindfulness, wires in a deeper sense of agency. That agency doesn't just improve mood, it directly increases your ability to build and retain muscle. Visualizing success is more than just mental fluff. Functional brain scans show that imagining a movement recruits nearly the same neural pathways as performing it. Seniors who combine visualization with actual movement have been shown to regain strength faster than those who only rely on physical effort. This mental rehearsal prepares the nervous system to engage more motor units, stabilize balance, and increase coordination. So whether it's picturing yourself getting up from the floor with ease, walking longer distances, or lifting heavier groceries, these mental images lay the groundwork for real-world performance. This entire system thrives when nutrition supports it. Whole eggs, fatty fish, leafy greens, legumes, fermented foods, and clean sources of protein deliver not just the building blocks for muscle, but also the nutrients that support the brain. Choline found in egg yolks fuels acetylcholine production, the neurotransmitter responsible for muscle contraction. Omega-3 fatty acids found in fish reduce inflammation and support neural membrane fluidity. Magnesium and B vitamins aid in energy production and stress regulation, making effort feel less draining and more sustainable. When nutrition supports neurotransmission, movement becomes more efficient and progress becomes easier to maintain. Consistency is what turns these components, movement, nutrition, and mindset, into a cycle of growth. There's no need for extremes. In fact, intense sporadic workouts or drastic dietary changes often backfire in older adults, leading to fatigue or discouragement. What works best is a sustainable loop: brief but meaningful daily movement, consistent high-quality meals, and a mind that stays engaged in the process. Over time, this rewires the system. Literally. Neural connections between brain and muscle grow stronger, coordination improves, and the likelihood of continued effort increases. Even the act of planning meals and movement routines can trigger reward pathways in the brain. Anticipation of positive outcomes is a neurochemical driver of adherence. Writing down a simple routine, morning protein, mid-morning walk, light resistance in the afternoon, can elevate intention and increase follow-through. This structured mindset shifts the focus from fighting aging to building capacity. It turns effort into identity. I am someone who moves. I am someone who builds. And that internal shift creates the most lasting results of all. In older adults, muscle loss often begins in the mind, not the body. It's the subtle voice that says it's too late or too hard or not worth it. But that voice is just an echo of past programming, not a truth rooted in biology. The nervous system is still adaptable, the muscles are still responsive, and the nutrients you consume still have power. When you synchronize movement with nourishment and align both with a purpose-driven mindset, the body responds. It doesn't just survive aging, it rewrites the trajectory of what aging looks and feels like.